Welcome. I'm David T. Phillips, your host each Wednesday for the Estate Planning Made Easy podcast that teaches you how to keep your wealth in the family. I would like to begin today's podcast by introducing you to my special guest, my oldest child, my firstborn, the president of Estate Planning Specialist, the co-author with me of our monthly newsletter, Generational Wealth Strategies, and the author of the book, The Future Retirement Savings, Todd Phillips. Welcome, Todd.
It's good to be here. Thanks, Todd.
Good to have you. I know I had to take you screaming and yelling in here because you had clients that you were talking with, and it's a Friday, and I know you're trying to get things done for the weekend, especially it's a long weekend. And so good to have you here. Good to be here. And I'm going to tell you, first of all, I'm going to tell our listeners what we're going to be talking about today. And the reason why I asked you to come on in, because we're going to be talking about estate planning mistake number 7 in my book, The 10 Most Common Estate Planning Mistakes and How to Avoid Them. And mistake number 7 is kind of interesting because in mistake number 7, it talks about having your estate be reduced because of investment losses or poor investments or maybe getting ripped off. And I want to tell, before I turn the microphone over to you, I want to tell our listeners a story, a true story that happened. So we're at one of the money shows, I think, or Freedom Fest or whatever, you and I are, and we meet this guy, and he's an MD, he's a doctor, and he's just about ready to retire. And he comes up to me and he says, I really need my estate plan. I've got 3 kids. I haven't done anything. My wife is deceased, and I just need to get things in line. So we do some stuff. We do some initial planning, gather data, and he calls me and he goes, hey, I've decided I am going to go to become a traveling MD just because I'm kind of bored and retiring. I want to be a traveling MD, and I can do that. And I can do these open-ended contracts. So he gets everything prepared to go, and he meets this gal, and they decide to go to Maui together. That was the assignment, was at the hospital in Maui. And he's there, and they assign him to his place where he's going to live for 3 months in the contract, and it's on the beach in Maui with his girlfriend.
There you go.
3 months turns into 1 year. 1 year turns into a year and a half. No contact with us. And we almost had his estate plan done, but he left. Still has his kids. Kids are still there. So anyway, he finally returns to sanity, to the world, and he's back in Missouri. And he calls us and he says, hey, I'm ready. I've got to get this thing rolling. I absolutely have to get my estate plan done. And so, I look at all the assets, and one of them I see is bullion, is $2 million of gold bullion. So I questioned him. I said, what is this? Well, I actually had seen this before. And he said, well, it's a deal that I did, and they have receipt of the bullion, but I have certificates that it's there. Okay, that's cool. So anyway, a couple of weeks go on, I don't hear from him. I get a hold of him, and he is beside himself. The company that took his $2 million, by the way, that was in his IRA, company that took his $2 million and bought the bullion didn't answer their phones. Phones were disconnected, gone. He checks around, can't find them. That year and a half that he was in Maui, they just went out of the picture. They're gone. He lost $2 million to the charlatan company that was not obviously very honest in their dealings with their fellow men. And so anyway, he ended up losing all of that. And I tell that story because, we all know of Bernie Madoff. We all know of situations like that. But we also know that the number that we talked a couple of weeks ago about longevity risk in the show. And one of the greatest longevity risks is what? Is losing money in the market. The longer you live, the likelihood, the chances are you're going to lose money in the market, period. And Mark Skousen, who is a good friend of ours and the editor of Forecasted Strategies, recently said this, and I'm going to quote this. He says, "Now is the time to take some chips off the table and talk with Todd Phillips about safe money investments." Now, what in the world is Mark talking about, Todd?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's kind of been my main purpose of the Safe Money Corner in the newsletter, and it's kind of been my focus. And early in my career, I graduated from ASU in 1998, and that's right in the height of the bull market. I was super excited. I was a finance major and wanted to start. I got my Series 7 and was ready to start investing for the family and some friends. And I did terrifically well in the beginning. And then the .com came and lost money for some of your close friends, and it was really painful,
including me.
And I just decided that wasn't for me. And we had also at the time done some other safe money stuff in '95, and that did so well that I gravitated to that side of the industry and kind of became an expert. I wrote a book, and then it kind of had me write it again. And then some of the newsletter gurus came to me for that advice, like Mark Skousen.
In fact, Bob Carlson, Retirement Watch. I know Tony Sagami, who's done several different newsletters, and then Dr. David Eifrig. And they're continuing. For the last 30, you've been with us for 30 years, and almost 30 years, and they have continued to recommend you, endorse you. Yeah. You are their go-to.
Yeah, I wrote a column for Bob Carlson a while back. Right. That was his annuity watch column. So yeah, I spent some time talking about safe money.
Can I also add? I know that Skousen's, I believe Eifrig, but I know Skousen's used you for their safe money.
Yes. Mark
he followed his own advice.
Had a phenomenal call in 2007. He could see the writing on the wall, and he said, "I want to move a really good chunk of his portfolio into safe money," and didn't lose a dime in the
08,
the recession and the credit crisis, and then rebounded and doubled his money 10 years later, and he would have lost a lot. So he definitely could see the writing on the wall and took his own advice. But yeah, so I think the moral, like you talked about the story of the couple from Maui losing money. In general, a rule of thumb, everyone knows this, but to diversify, I mean, had they not put all that money in there, he wouldn't have lost. He would have maybe only lost a portion. But there's definitely sharks out there. There always will be. It's just nature. It's been since the dawn of man that there's been people, charlatans out there trying to get money. And so you got to do your due diligence and diversify into anything. Now, the good news is about most of the safe money stuff, if it's truly safe, is going to have some kind of guarantee. So if you got your CDs, the bank, the Fed's going to protect that with the SIPC, the up to $250,000, and annuities and life insurance is typically $250,000 to $500,000, depending on what state. So they're going to guaranteed. Yeah, they will guarantee. So if the company goes out of business, goes under, just like the banks, it will pick up the slack through the insurance reserve funds, but there will be some kind of guarantee that you will have. So they want to look at, you can just Google your state and insurance guarantee funds. You could look it up and it'll show you how much you have guaranteed per state, per contract. So that's great that you have that guarantee. You can sleep at night knowing that no matter what, at least it's still going to be there. And I kind of like to follow the other study. I don't know, Yale's Endowment Fund is a great model to follow. They typically have David Swenson he's passed now, but he kind of set this model to have at least 25% of the portfolio in safe money or absolute return investment. Now they're doing huge derivatives and hedge funds to help make sure it was absolute return, but we can do that through other products, not quite as on the large scale as $500 billion management, but we can hedge it with part of the portfolio, he did 25% of the portfolio in absolute return. That was typically 25 to 30. I think that's a great rule of thumb. Now, as you get older, you're going to want to put more into safe money because you can't afford to make up for the losses if you have a huge loss. So as you get a little older, maybe gravitate a little bit higher percentage of the portfolio.
And someday,
25.
And someday I want you to tell our listeners about the sequence of return. It's a pretty popular concept, but I don't think we have time for that today.
I can get into it really quickly.
Okay,
and then we can get into it further. That's a great point. The biggest thing, and we can run all kinds of numbers and show you statistics, but you cannot take a big loss in the beginning of retirement. So if you start out, 65, you retire, take a 30, 40% hit, it's going to affect your portfolio and your retirement a lot harder than if you took that same loss when you're 85 years old. So if you take it in the beginning as you're drawing funds, you're not going to be able to make it back. And we have they can see our videos, and there's a lot of statistics we can show maybe on a graph or the charts or books we have that you can't take those losses in the beginning. And I think a lot of people know the basic stock market math. If you lose 50% in the market, you have to make 100% to get back to where you were. It's kind of crazy to think about, but if I have $100, I lose 50%, I'm now at $50. To make it back to 100, I have to double it and make 100. So you can't really take those losses. It's best to avoid those losses. And I mean, we saw what happened.
So the older we are, we can't kind of have to hunker down, don't we? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I think it's great to play games, take a little more risk when you're young, and you can take those losses and have plenty of time to rebound, jump back. When you start getting 75, 80 years old, you can't take those losses because you're just not going to be able to have time to make it back.
Right. Well, okay. So that talks about a little bit of starting at the right time. Now here's what's an interesting thing is that when I wrote my book, The Family Bank Strategy, about using life insurance as an investment tool because it's tax-free versus tax-deferred, and annuities, which is one of the main things that you recommend, are tax-deferred. They're not tax-free. But when I did that, CDs were about 1%. And at that time, annuities were terrible. I mean, they weren't very good, right?
You had to work pretty hard.
You had to work pretty hard. Today, it's totally different.
Yeah.
Even the fact that CDs are paying 3 and 4%, which is cool, much better than 1 or 0. Remember in Japan, they weren't even paying any interest yet. But right now, there's a call that you have. It's about a new annuity or an annuity that we have in our portfolio that's kind of unique to us. And it's being endorsed and recommended by Roger Michalski from Eagle Publishing.
Yeah.
And it's currently earning 11.1% on a roll-up. Is that correct?
Well, no, that's their payout. It depends on your age.
Okay.
But I guess kind of the bottom line right now, we are in the highest interest rate environment we've been in the last 20 years. So it is a fantastic time. I'm super happy to recommend the products we have now because they're just the highest payouts they've been. So if you're looking at just CDs, treasuries, fixed annuities, multi-year guarantee annuities, MYGAs, you should be able to get 5.5 without looking too hard. Whereas before we were lucky to find one.
Which is back to the MYGA thing, the multi-year guaranteed annuity. One of the things we talked about in our longevity risk discussion was running out of money. The longer you live, you start your retirement at 65 and you die at 66. Okay, you didn't have to worry about longevity risk. But you die at 90, you got 20 years, 25 years that you got to be concerned about making sure you bring in enough money. And one of the things that multi-year guarantee or just guaranteed income annuities do is what? Is they give you guaranteed income for the rest of your life, and you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
It's like Social Security, but it's not tied to the government. It's your money and invested in a blue chip insurance company, a really fabulously rated insurance company, guaranteed for the rest of your life. And this market. This is why you write the Safe Money. In fact, I'm going to show our listeners here before we close today. And then remember, this is a 2-part series, so I'm going to be covering most of this. We're going to be talking about a lot of this again not again, we're going to be talking about some solutions next week, but we're going to be talking about it again. But Todd does this column. This is on page 8 of the June issue, which just came out, called the Safe Money Corner Best of the Month. And this will be in your show notes. I'll actually take this one here with permission from Roger at Eagle Pub to publish this in our podcast at this particular page, so they can see the kind of work you're doing every month for our subscribers, and telling them where the best options are, where they are, because the market does change. It fluctuates, from time to time. Well, I just also want to tell you that Todd's book, The Future of Retirement Savings, has been renamed. And it's now called, and I'm going to read this just so I don't want to get it wrong. It's called Guaranteed Income, How to Lock in Double-Digit Returns for the Rest of Your Life. And where are you on getting this done?
I'm just in the final editing stages. So I have written the content and just about to put it out.
Okay.
It'll come out first in special report form, and then we'll put it into a nice book here.
Okay. And then it's going to be, right now, if they wanted to get that, they could pre-order it. They could call the office. The number is 888-892-1102. We'll see if we can get it on the Shopify account, which is shop.epmez.com. I'll try to get that on there. But regardless, just give us a call. Call Haley or Carly or anyone from the office and pre-order Todd's book. Again, it's renamed from The Future Retirement Savings to Guaranteed Income, How to Lock in Double-Digit Returns for the Rest of Your Life. Well, let's conclude, and let's reconvene next week, next Wednesday, and we'll cover a little bit more about safe money and making sure that we have enough money for our future. Any last words?
Yeah, one final point before we leave. There's really no excuse today to not have some money in safety. There's just, the returns are too good and too high. I mean, we're looking at the stock market. If you go from 2000 to today, if you look at the S&P, it's just barely 6%. We can be guaranteed that without taking any risk right now. That's the kind of environment we're in. So there's no reason. I still will run into 85-year-olds that have 100% of their money in the market, and that's just crazy. Now it's time to take some money, take advantage of these phenomenal rates, put it into safety, get those guaranteed rates, sleep at night, knowing your money is 100% protected. You just don't have to take the risk that you used to. We were forced to take so much because we didn't have any yield, but now we have great yield. We can have great returns.
And we can lock it in.
Retirement. I don't know that it's going to last. The Fed's already said they're pushing to drop rates. They're having to finance these interest rates at such high on the debt that they have at these high rates now. They want to drop the rates. I know they're worried about inflation. Who knows what the future is going to hold? I just do know that you can get 6 right now, and it's just a great opportunity to take advantage of. And we'll be talking about next time those advantages, some specific examples that we can use. It's a great opportunity today. So do your homework. In the meantime, start researching. It's a great opportunity right now.
Okay, well, thanks, Todd, and thanks to all of you for listening. Go to our show notes. This is David Phillips, CEO of Estate Planning Specialists, and your host each week for Estate Planning Made Easy, the podcast that teaches you how to keep your wealth in the family. Thanks for listening, and thank you, Todd, for being our guest today. Take care.